Okay, and it is finally time for the last Spires video of this rotation, at least 191 to 200. I have completed all of them, and I have to say, first of all, a few disclaimers. Summoners that are used in this one will be Cleave and Orbia. For some stages towards the end, I have started using Cleave, but most of the part will be done with Orbia, right? And starting with stage 192, I have used the new accessory set, which increases the damage dealt from dots, as well as makes enemies unrevivable if they die from dot effects. So just a disclaimer on why some of the teams work. I will say this: yes, it can be a little bit annoying and expensive to get that dot set, but trust me, if you wanna push Spires, like push it and be done for it forever, that dot set is gonna be crucial, because not only it will work in this one, like from 191 to 200 in some stages, right? But it will also work for a lot of the viable stages earlier on. So yeah, if you're struggling with Spires and you're like completely out of ideas on what to do invest into a dot set. Make it like +9, +12, right? You don't have to push it too far. But trust me, that dot set is a game changer for some of these stages, yeah? But yeah, starting with 191, what I did is I picked Purian, Sharon, and Ophelia, right? Light and Dark Orbia, alternating between those two. And for this one, the first thing I did is kill both of the Paladins, right? I will say this, I highly recommend bringing Sharon in here, because there's a lot of healing from those Shushus, and as soon as Sharon applies the Undead effect, those Shushus will completely destroy any unit that they try to heal, right? As you can see there, I myself didn't do that much damage there, it was all the Shushus, right? Sharon gonna apply the Undead soon, and every time Shushu heals, the Paladin loses like 5 to 10% of their max HP for each heal, right? So yeah, focus on the Paladins. I tried to focus on Kraka first in some of my earlier runs, but I sort of failed there, because I tried to kill the Kraka, right? I tried to hit her quite low, but then Paladins will keep provoking you eventually, right? And it just makes it a little bit too difficult, right? So I just decided to get rid of those Paladins. There's no revive apart from Kraka, right? And her revives only procs if she dies, so as long as you kill everyone besides her and then leave her for last with an anti-revive kill, you will be just fine. But yeah, Sharon was an absolute beast in this one. Kraka's strip, right? It will apply defense break, but it will not do any deadly damage as long as you have a little bit of tankiness on your units, so do not worry too much about those. Ophelia will heal you up, Ophelia will cleanse you up, and you will be just fine. And once all of the 4 add-ons are dead, right? You will want to switch some sort of a unit that provides anti-revive and kill the Kraka with it, right? The easiest one by far will be the Perna, but you can also use something like the Wind Archer or any other anti-revive. I would highly recommend using an anti-revive unit that applies the unrevivable debuff instead of killing with that skill, because sometimes, and especially with your summoners, you do quite a bit of damage and may accidentally kill it yourself, right? So it's a bit easier with the debuff instead. But yeah, you'll see that once I kill the Shushu, I will switch out my Sharon to Perna and just quickly finish off the run. And yeah, I'm gonna leave this one running, and we'll see you in the 192. Okay, and 192. So this is the stage where I have crafted my accessory set for the increased dot damage, and this is where I used it. I will say this, the strategy I used here will work without the dot set as well. I actually got it really close before I even had the set with the exactly same strategy. However, there will be a little bit of RNG involved, and your dots will do a little bit of damage. But if you have stronger units, if you have something like a much stronger summoner than I do, because trust me, my Orbia is definitely not top tier. I just built her with like +12 gear, right? This same strategy will still work if you do not have the dot set, but with the dot set it will be much easier and much safer, right? But yeah, the general strategy here is I brought the ultimate cycling team. So with this team, with Purian and Juno, first of all, you are able to cycle mana like crazy. If you look at the mana regen I get, especially when Juno decides to strip buffs or when she decides to cleanse some of the buffs, right? You'll notice that you are able to spam your skills a lot. Sometimes you'll get so much mana that you actually won't be able to spend it fast enough, right? And yeah, with the general strategy for this one is I try to group up as many enemies into a single spot as possible. Ophelia makes that a little bit easier because she has a pull on her first skill, right? And the goal with this one was to constantly keep stripping with Juno, constantly keep healing and applying those burns with Ophelia, and eventually all of them will die to the chip damage from your summoner as well as from the bunch of dots that you are applying, right? With Dark Orbia you have the heal block, so they're unable to heal, and since you are spamming skills a lot, they will not be able to cleanse that heal block easily as well, right? And as you can see, like, it's not just the anti-revive set, everyone is dying somewhat equally, right? Like, sometimes units will take less damage, they'll have like shields and stuff like that. For example, something like the Light Paladin will naturally take less damage since she has that invincibility up for the longest time, right? But yeah, if you use this strategy without the dot set, you do want to kill the Undyne first, and I managed to do it a few times, and the closest I got was with a single vampire being left, well, vampire hunter I mean, being left at like 40 to 50% HP, so it's definitely doable, but the dot set will make dots be much stronger, and it will mean that you can kill any other unit. It doesn't just have to be the Undyne first, because they will simply not be revivable. And if you see a unit get really close, like really low HP, and they have a lot of poisons, make sure to stop attacking them for a bit, as if you do kill them with any of your active skills, right, that do not involve dots, you will unfortunately not get the effect from the unrevivable, and the monster will be revived by the Undyne, right? And yeah, after the majority of them were dead, I switched to a Perna. I just found that using a Perna on the Light Paladin was a little bit easier compared to any other options I had. I tried like block beneficial effects, I tried constantly like continuing with the strategy. That didn't seem to work too well. Like, it worked, but it didn't work too well, right? Usually the issue was the time limit, but with the Perna it was a bit easier. And yeah, I know the stage is really difficult for some, so I do give this strategy a shot, even if you do not have the set. Yeah, maybe you have a stronger summoner build and you will be able to just wipe it out without the set. But if you do struggle, I do highly recommend bringing the set, because it will be used for 192 and it will be used for like 1 or 2 other stages that I do soon as well. Okay, and 193, so this is the team I used: Purian, Ophelia, Sharon at least for the first kill, and the Wind Orbia to cycle the mana, as well as increase the damage a lot. I found that Wind Orbia, especially with this Tornado skill, deals a bunch of damage, right? And the strategy for this one is essentially try to focus on the Josephine as soon as possible. With Sharon, you will have the Oblivion, so you will silence her passive, and you will also have a lot of undead, so those Jomairs will not be able to heal with their second skills or their basic attacks, right? Because look at their attack speed, they're attacking a lot and they would be healing you a lot, right? And that undead just makes it not only easier to kill, but also it will just prevent any healing that they have. And once you kill the Paladin, I personally switched back to the same strategy as in the previous level. I switched out to Juno and I just did a lot of dot cycling. So since all of the units here are ranged, you want to group them up and you want to just dot them to death. And yeah, because there are some Jomairs in the stage, make sure to not bring any unit or any summoner element that has either a root or a silence. I'm not even sure if there are any actually. I know Cleave has a silence on his new skill too, right? So if you are bringing a Fire Cleave, and there's a good chance that you are bringing a Fire Cleave here, make sure to not have that new skill 2 active, because every time you silence, you will be applying those silences and the Jomair passives will proc. And now 194. So for this one, I actually have two teams that work because I accidentally forgot to record my very first run when I completed it. And I was sort of blocked from using fire units. So the first team I used was the same exact one as in the previous round and 192 as well, I think. Basically Purian, Juno and Ophelia. You just cycle the mana because there's a lot of buffs in here. You will be getting a bunch of mana from Juno and you will be able to kill all of them with dots, right? Because as you can see, there is a lot of buffs. There isn't any cleanse, right? So they will not be able to cleanse stuff like the heal block, and you'll just be able to burn them with dots, with poisons, and just with damage in general, right? The second team that worked, because I couldn't place any fire units, was this. So I used Tion, Fran, and Shimite. It doesn't have to be a Fran, right? Like if you do not have a Fran, do not worry. As long as you have any immunity, you will be just fine, right? Because I do highly recommend getting the immunity. You will be immune to stuff like the pull from the Pisamat. You will be immune to stuff like the damage taken up from him. And yeah, the general idea with this is, again, this is one of the stages where I do have the dot set, which means that my dots did more damage as well as they were unrevivable if killed by the dot. And as you can see, there are 4 revivers in the stage, so you do need some sort of an anti-revive in here. If you do not have the dot set, unfortunately, you will need to think of some way to incorporate a anti-reviver in here, right? You can try something like a Dark Soletta skill 1. You can try something like the Wind Archer to actually block those. I cannot say that any of them will work because I just didn't have experience testing the stage without that set. But seeing as they weren't that tanky overall, and like Tion and Shimite were able to strip and deal with a lot of damage quite easily, you will probably be able to make it with something like a Wind Archer in there as well, right? But yeah, the general strategy behind this one is, again, you're essentially doing a lot of mana cycling while stripping them as well. So Shimite is a very good alternative to something like a Juno, right? It will not heal, however, it will be able to cycle your mana, I would say, even better, and it will definitely be providing even more consistent strips because both of the skills are able to strip 2 buffs, and the first skill even decreases the cooldown of the second skill, and since you're cycling 2 strip skills instead of 1, those buffs will be removed much faster, right? And the ultimate he has is also amazing. It does a lot of strips. It usually maxes out your mana regen at 10, so you are able to spam even more. But yeah, the general strategy, again, make sure to not kill the units with your actual attacks and let dots do that. So a good strategy here would be in the enemies tab. Make sure that, I didn't do this, but I do recommend it for you. Make sure that the list goes from lowest HP to highest HP, right? For me, it's the opposite. I left the highest HP at the top, but put the lowest HP targets at the top. You will see that whenever someone is low, you can back up a little bit and you will be able to let the dots kill them. I found that it's a bit easier that way because if you do not see all of the opponents there, and especially if the lowest HP is at the bottom, you might miss it through all of the chaos happening, right? And it will be easier that way. But yeah, since both of these are active revivers, if you do kill them all at once, that's also a strategy, right? It doesn't have to be just anti-revive. You can try to combo kill them all at once, but killing like 4 or 5 units like that will be a bit difficult, right? It could be possible to do like 1, 2, maybe 3 in some case, but yeah, the more you try to do, the higher it will be. But yeah, either this team or the Purian, Juno and Ophelia worked just as fine. And for 195, again, once again, I am using the mana cycling strategy, and for this one, it's gonna be extremely strong because there are a lot of opponents there, and the more opponents the Wind Sylph hits, the more mana regen you will be able to get, right? So in this one, I personally targeted the Valkyria first. I think since that is essentially the only threat in that team, I would try to kill her first, right? Do not worry too much about buffs. The Wind Sylph, with all of the strips he has, will take care of those. However, if you do have a block beneficial effect from some sort, I do consider using it. I use the light Orbia not because of the buff block, but because you will be able to cycle mana with it since you're hitting dark targets a lot, right? And it just increases your mana a lot. If you don't have that, I mean, Wind Sylph will be plenty of mana regen. In this state, technically he should be able to upkeep level 10 mana regen permanently, especially if you use ultimates like that, right? And as you can see, they are taking a lot of damage, and they're not taking that damage from dots, they are actually taking that from just raw damage, and in a minute almost everyone is dead. I will say this, you will struggle a bit with supports, so what I would try to recommend you doing is try to walk around all of them and see if you are able to group up the supports, at least the Limas in here, right? Because if you leave the supports away, once you are done killing all of the skeletons and all of the Valkyrias, those supports will be a little bit difficult to kill, especially time-wise, right? Like, they could be a little bit difficult to kill due to the lack of damage that you do. So try to pull them in, right? With Ophelia, you will have that pull, but Ophelia has to be positioned correctly. So if you see that supports are staying on the outside and not in the group, either like the start the run or try to walk around so that Ophelia pulls everyone in there, because if you spam those AoEs on everyone, you will be able to deal with the supports as well. And that's what I found didn't work when I used something like a Juno for some reason, right? Like those supports, they kept running away and I couldn't just stack them up properly, right? But yeah, once you stack them properly, you will AoE and deal a bunch of damage. No need for the dot set here. You're doing it through the ultimates and through the Wind Sylph raw damage alone. Okay, and for 196, this is the team I used: Purian, Fran, and the Wind Paladin, right? I will say this, do not worry too much about the stage, because what I found is that the opponents here are super squishy. Like, you'll see, once I start doing damage on the Wind Harp, you'll see how squishy they are. Just look at this. I hit a few abilities and without any defense break, they're like 70% HP already, right? So yeah, that was wild. But the general strategy here is there will be quite a few strips and a lot of sleeps. However, if you manage to get a Paladin to provoke, well, it doesn't have to be the Paladin, it can be any other unit. If you manage to get someone to provoke all of those units and you use backline units like support, archers, mages, right? Usually you will be able to just run away by, of course, unlinking the monster following button, and all of them will be sleeping the provoking unit while you can just slowly chip away at all of them, right? You can see that my Paladin was pretty much the whole game standing in the middle of them. They all were targeting the Paladin, and I was just able to freely kill them one by one, right? Do bring immunity, I do recommend bringing it, because it will allow you to protect yourself a bit more. Like, do not worry if the Paladin is slept, right? He won't be taking damages, right? There's pretty much no damage in this round. The only thing that there is a sleep, right? And unfortunately, the only ways you can counter that sleep without something like a provoking unit would be ideally something like an Annabelle, right? Who can remove that CC as soon as it's applied, but there is a lot of sleep, so there will be a lot of downtime on her passive as well. So yeah, the easiest strategy, trust me, just get a provoker in there and then chip away at units one by one by just staying out of range of that provoker so that you do not get hit by any of the sleeps. Okay, and this is what I used for 197, and I cannot take any credit for this idea. This was all helped out through the general Discord, so by the way, if you haven't joined that, make sure you do. There's amazing helpful people there, and they have helped me to come up with this team. They showed me how it works, and trust me, this is by far the weirdest team I have used, and by far the easiest, because you can fully shut off your brain, just spam one skill and you will actually just win super easily. I have tried numerous teams with Orbia, with Cleave, trying all sorts of different summoners like Bomb Cleansers, like Double Beast Rider, stuff like that. Nothing was coming even close. This, I used like 3 times and I managed to smash it completely. So yeah, I highly recommend this. But the general idea here is you have to target the Dark Oracle first, because she will be doing the main damage here, since you don't really have a dedicated bomb cleanser, right? But what you do is you will want to pop a skill tree from Wind Cleave, which will increase the damage of your monsters, right? And then switch to the Water Cleave with the new skill 2. And what the new skill 2 does is essentially, first of all, it lowers the damage by a lot. And second of all, it will allow you to apply a lot of CC to opponents that hit you, right? And since you are provoking them, and they will be hitting you with all of those multi-hits, you will have a lot of opportunities to apply a lot of that CC. And once you kill the Gianna, there's really no damage left. All that is a damage check. After that, do go for the Water Oracle, because she is another annoying stripper in here. Once the Water Oracle is dead, there will be no strips and the run will be super safe. But yeah, what you want to do is essentially spam the skill 2 on your Savannah, the Wind Beast Rider, because what it does is applies skilled acceleration, so they cannot spam the skills that often. It applies defense break if you have more attack than the opponents, right? Like, it will be hard to get more attack because I think the oracles have like 8,000, but once she gets some stacks, and if you have something like an attack artifact, you will be able to have more attack than them and apply the defense break. Do not worry if you see that your Savannah is not doing a lot of damage. As long as you have more attack to apply the defense break, your other units will be able to do the damage, right? Since there is a lot of heal block, the damage she does will not be as important. Just make sure that she is able to apply those defense breaks by having more attack, right? I think mine had like 6,000, maybe 6.5k, and after getting some attack from their stacks, she was able to get more than the opponents and apply those defense breaks. She also cycles her skill, because skill 2 reduces your summoner and monster cooldown by 20 seconds, or I mean 20%, right? And yeah, you'll be able to finish them off quite easily. When there are 2 units left, I highly recommend going for the Windy first, because Ophelia, she can heal, she can apply defense break, right? She will not be able to apply that annoying shield, and that annoying shield, trust me, it will ruin you. It will ruin some of the successful runs, so just make sure to go for Windy first, because if he is not able to apply those effects, those shield effects, by just getting a beneficial block himself, it will be much easier, right? Like, if you see you are struggling a lot with keeping up the beneficial effect, you can do something like an Ophelian, like something like a Thessalian. You see that Ophelia is cleansing those beneficial blocks a lot. Thessalian applies Oblivion with the basic attack, right? So it will be more consistent. You can switch to that in order to kill the Windy, and then switch back to whatever to kill the Ophelia. But yeah, I don't know how this team worked. It's like a miracle team. I would never think of using Savannah or the Water Monkey in Spires. But yeah, it worked, and all credit goes to the Discord who actually helped me with this. And now 198, so yeah, don't worry. You have completed 197, that was the hardest stage. It all gets easier from here. The next 2 stages will be extremely easy, starting with 198. This was pretty much just a few water units, right? And a wind raven. The good thing about this, there isn't a single stripper in the opponent's team, right? So all you have to do is buff up immunity right at the start, right? Once you buff up immunity, there's really nothing they can do, just nuke them. What I did was I continued using the Wind Savannah for the cycling. I have used the Wind Sylph to charge my mana a bunch, right? And yeah, once you kill everyone, if you do not have the anti-revive set, you can switch to any unit that would be able to kill the Water Joker. That's exactly what I did here, because what's the point of relying on that if you can just kill it with something like a revive block, right? So I just switched to double archer, Fran to buff up immunity, and yeah, once he has beneficial effect and anti-revive, there's really nothing he can do. Those bombs will not be deadly, especially if you do something like a weaken attack on him. And yeah, this was probably like one of the fastest stages I did, right? I did it in a minute, and I think I completed the challenge, and it might still be in the leaderboards in NA for like 50 seconds with the same team. But yeah, this was super easy. any wind unit, any immunity, right? Especially if your summoner is wind, that would be ideal, and it's just GG, just nuke them. Okay, and 199 I was actually doing with Cleave as well, right? So the reason I was doing with Cleave is I just didn't bother switching, right? It doesn't have to be Cleave. I would say I highly recommend any summoner that is able to do a heal block, but it will be a little bit easier, right? And the only monster you really need in here is the Jemaya, because there will be there's actually 4 monsters that can root, so having that cleanse, heal, and immunity from the Jemaya will be very clutch. But the general strategy I had there is I have the Ophelia. I essentially try to root everyone in place, and by just slowly stripping their buffs and cleansing all of the debuffs, I just heal block them and burn them to death with all of the burn stacks that they have. If you have both Ophelia and Juno, you'll have insane burn stacks, usually like level 10 at all times, right? But yeah, it's really easy to stack them. There isn't really any boss creatures, and the only boss creatures in here are actually melee, so they will come to yourself, right? And you will not need to like play around dodging all of that, right? Like you see some Fairies dodging, you can simply just pull them because they're not boss creatures and they will not resist any of that CC. And yeah, I just simply mashed my buttons, just waited for the heal blocks to land, waited for the burns to land, and just simply killed all of them. There's no revive or anything like that, so you don't even need the set really. It will boost your damage, but you really don't need it. If you have the option for it, do try to bring something like a block, beneficial effect removal. The easiest one will be the Ophelia, right? Because it will prevent the Ophelia's cleansing all of her heal blocks as easily, right? Because they will first have to target that block beneficial effect removal block, and only then can they try to cleanse the heal block. But if you stack a lot of debuffs, they'll have a hard time targeting that as well. But yeah, really no sort of like alien strategy here. All you have to do is root them in place and burn them to death, right? And the big stage 200. So again, this was something suggested by the community. I cannot take any credit for thinking of this team, but I will say this: surprisingly enough, it worked super well, right? And I got it working in just a few tries. But yeah, the general idea here is you must bring a Jemaya, because if you look at their team, quite literally every single unit in there roots, right? Apart from maybe the Dark Paladin. But yeah, the general strategy here is have Ophelia for the cleanse and pull. That's pretty important because it will allow you to do a lot of damage a little bit easier, right? And what you want to have is a Savannah, first of all, to apply defense breaks, and second of all, skilled accelerations, which means they will spam their abilities way less. And second of all, it will allow you to cycle your abilities something like a baby Puriani, right? And once they're all grouped up, especially if you have a summoner that does AoE damage, it will be completely free. I'm not gonna lie, like they will not be able to do much damage to you, and you will be able to do massive damage to them. However, make sure to not go too squishy on your units. I think all of my units here had like at least 90k HP, right? Because there will be a lot of bursts. Like they can burst a lot of damage at once, but in total the damage will definitely not be too big. So if your Ophelia cleanse is ready, for example, she will be able to mitigate most of that damage, right? And keep in mind, you still have a Jemaya in there who is able to lower the damage a lot, right? Do not worry if the Mystic Witch is somewhere there in the back, right? You will be able to kill her quite easily after you're done with all of the melee rooting champions. But yeah, that's the general strategy I used. Somewhere midway my Savannah got dismounted, but since I was pretty much done dealing with all of the AoE defense breaks that I needed, I didn't really bother. I just finished the other champions, and then I switched another unit to kill the archer a little bit easier, right? And yeah, honestly, The first thing I would target is the paladin, by the way, because it will be very annoying with those provokes, especially if you want to target something else and she keeps provoking and like healing them, attack buffing him, right? So try to kill the paladin first. If you're an Orbier, use a light weapon. That will allow you to cycle mana a bit more. But yeah, once all of the routers are done, the Mystic Witch, yes, she has like her amazing 4-star legendary artifact, but she really won't be able to do much. Just bring something like archers like I did, and yeah, it will be pretty free. And yeah, that about wraps up the whole Spires of Ascension saga, until we get more, of course. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. Links for all of the videos, all the way from 140 to 200, are in the pinned comment. And yeah, peace.